Hello, my name is David Larrea, and this is my project for the Media Specialist Practice module. This is going to be a video describing what are the aims of the project and what are the deliverables, and a little bit of what I have done in this project. So first I'm going to show you the cover of the game. It's called Forest Guardian. And it's a game based in sound mechanics. So the main thing for this game was the research part about the sound in video games and what are the different mechanics and how it works and how it's going into the future. Then I made also a design document for the game and finally a prototype for it. So about the research, a little bit, it's some history about the video games, binaural audio, 3D surround, and also some examples which I will be showing you up a little bit in more detail. Then I'm going to show you about the game design document, some of the basic ideas behind it and the art style and the mechanics, and finally a Unity prototype. Okay. Now, going first with the research document. Let me find it out. Okay, so this research document is the main part of my project. It is about the importance of sound in video games and sound-based mechanics in the past, present, and future. So first, I'm going to talk briefly about the idea of this. Is usually video games include sounds, but we as players visualize them or see them as mostly an aesthetical part of it, when there is a lot more behind that we usually don't take into consideration. It's precisely this about the importance of sound in video games, this behind part that we don't know, why I decided to make this research document. I consider myself an artist, but in the visual style. I have been working in the past in 3D and video games in general, but sound, it's always been my weak point, I would say, and that's the reason why I decided to research a little bit more into it and understand more of it. So I hope with this research I will also help everyone else. I know it's in general a topic that is underrated. So in the importance of video games, pretty much I talk about, or I research about how sound works, how it's different from sight, what can we express through sounds. Sound is a very emotive media. It's easy to generate emotions in the players, and sound is also has a special ability that is it helps you, especially music, get away or create a barrier between you and the world, letting you be more immersed in the experiences. A little bit of history in sound and video games. Well, it started with no sound, so in the beginning of video games, before the video games, it also there was some audio games, like Mozart's musical dice game, which was called Musikalisches Würfelspiel. I hope I pronounced that well. But the idea is that they randomly generated, with the use of dice, different songs, let's say, using pre-composed parts. So this became very popular in the 18th century. So sound-related games, let's say, it has been like already for a while, way before the start of video games. But going back to the topic of video games, it started with no sound. The first game to have sound effects was Punk in 1972. 1974, Simon Says, or Simon game, was released as a kind of handheld game console, let's say, that used the first game-related mechanic, which was kind of a rhythm game that used also different tones, in 4 different tones and 4 different color lights that illuminated, and the idea was to pretty much keep the memorize all the way. Um, was also a little bit of the research on how sound was used to do in the past. In the first consoles, they used to have a clicker that was called also the beep speakers. There was a speaker with a clicker attached directly to the CPU or to a specified chip for sound, which made different noises in different voice channels. These voice channels became more complicated with time. The first consoles had one channel that was able to reproduce one sound wave. The next generation, like the Nintendo, had, for example, actually five channels. Sorry, each channel was able to produce a specific kind of sound. So, for example, with the NS, the first two channels were square waves. The third channel, if I'm not wrong, was let me find it out. It was a triangle, yes, wave. The fourth noise, and the fifth was pre-recorded waves. Also, other future consoles, like the how's it called, the Commodore 64, had less voices, but they were able to generate like dynamic combinations of these voices, and each channel was able to produce different waves at the same time. So changing it to time with this dynamic programming, let's say, it was able to produce more than three voices, or generate the idea that it was producing more than three voices. After that, it was released also of the CD quality with the Atari Jaguar, and later on, one of the most influenced video games in what sound is related was released. That was Parappa the Rapper, that created or generated, because it was not the first, but it was the most influential, generated a following games of rhythm-based mechanics like Dance Dance Revolution or Guitar Hero and so on. One other different game that appeared and that was a pioneer on its type was V-Ribbon, that instead of using sound as part of the game, it uses the sound to generate other things in the game, like the levels and the art in procedural way. So it was like something new for the time, and that it has been used not so much in the present. And that's the idea, to try to encourage more this kind of mechanics. After that, it was in the 2000 a little bit of voice recognition into the video games with games like Seaman for the Dreamcast and Hey You Pikachu for Nintendo 64. And we get today to 2017, when there is a return of the binaural sound recordings for 3D surround systems, and especially for the VR to produce more immersive experiences. Sound-based mechanics, I'm gonna go really fast on these. Pre-composed music games. There are pretty much games that use the pre-composed sounds as part of the game mechanics. Dynamic music generator games, which are games that use instead mechanics to generate sounds and compose music styles, like Ref, for example. And sound input games, which use like Parappa the Rapper, the sound to generate different things in the game. And finally, games for the blind, that are games that do not have a strong visual influence. Sometimes they do, but it's just so that other people can also appreciate it a little bit more, but they are based almost all in audio. Right now, there's been also a boom in the surround area with the 5.1 and 7.1 compositions, especially for headsets. So that's been important also to generate a little bit more of animation. But the interesting part is that binaural audio recording is coming back. Binaural audio recording is a recording that tries to emulate or imitate the way we listen as humans. So they use this kind of head dummies that have microphones in their ears to capture the sound as it rebounds in the inner ear, and also with a different approach from left to right into different channels to be then reproduced through headphones as well and generate the idea of a speciality. So this is very useful in VR because it lets you generate a more immersive, more realistic experience in a world that already has an experience like volume, let's say, an area to explore around. Also, some examples of exceptional video games that use sounds are Overwatch. Overwatch is here because it uses sound as to generate a lot of information or to deliver a lot of information to the player, especially as form of cues and spatial awareness on, for example, the use of footsteps that differentiate which characters are coming toward you. And another thing is, for example, footsteps of enemies will sound in a higher volume than those from allies. So the game tries to also sort the sounds the listener receives in an individual way for each player, so that each player will receive those important sounds first, and then the rest will minimize and their volume, so they are not noise for the important things you have to fear, those that will harm you. Then I'm talking about a little bit of alien isolation, mostly because it's a VR experience that uses an interesting mechanic in which the alien can listen to you. So it is making the line thinner between the game and the player. Perception also is a very unique experience in which they use sound inside the game to visualize the environment as an echolocation. And finally, Papa Sangre, which is a game for the iOS that is completely sound-based with binaural audio. So this represents pretty much all that this report is about. That's pretty much the report in general ideas. I'm going to show you now a little bit of the GDD of the game. So, yes, this is it. Forest Guardian, I'm going to show you the GDD. So this is the cover as I showed you to you. A little bit of the story of Forest Guardian. You are creature, a spirit guardian of the forest, which after some time of being asleep and in hibernation, you wake up and find out that your forest has completely been destroyed. You don't know what has happened, but since you're like a creature with special powers, and you're like the guardian of this forest, you have to restore it back to its original state. So you start making things growing up with your special powers, like singing and making sounds to make them plants grow. But as you continue in the game, you find out that some certain like monsters appear that try to let's say destroy the forest that you are regrowing. Also, you find some strange artifacts that does not belong to the forest, and from these artifacts, the monsters are emanating. So, as you find out later on in the story, these monsters are some remnants of the past. In which they're bad energy of what happened while you were sleeping. The idea is that in this time you were sleeping, since you're a spirit and you were in a different in the spirit world, time transcurred in different way that we humans perceive it. So while you were sleeping, humans like evolved, appeared, consumed the forest, destroyed it, and they were destroyed also by their own means of consumption, and eventually disappeared before you wake up. So while you were sleeping, humans like raised and thrived and then died. So it's time to eliminate this energy that stayed behind of the corruption and the consumption. The game flow outlined. Well, I'm gonna talk a little bit about the idea of the game. So you are the forest guardian, which is called Mawida. You're a small creature, but you have great power. Although your power is related to the forest, so the more you heal the forest, the more power you have. You will play in 10 different levels, 10 different zones in which you have to. These are zones of the forest that has been like, let's say, destroyed. So now it's pretty much a desert, and you will have to make them all go back to the original state. You'll find some. The first game in the first level, of course, is going to be a tutorial, and as you advance, you're going to start encountering enemies. You're going to be into a night-day cycle in which in the night more things will appear than in the day. So in the day you can like focus on making things grow. In the night you are going to go into more a defensive state. You will face this hunter creature that will try to eat you. That is the only creature that can really harm you. So when he is outside and he is a huge creature, you will have to hide and try to avoid it as much as possible. And especially you will have to be very silent because it will recognize any sound you make through the microphone. The game world is going to be at first a desert. The idea of the game is obviously making that desert into a thriving forest. Different part of the woods will be of different kind of plants, so that will also be interesting in helping, and you will also have some creatures and spirits that roam this forest as you make it nicer. This is the sound experience, so it has to be using headsets. It will include a lot of binaural sound effects or aerial surround sound effects, also music that will change in the different modes that the game evolves. So different music from the desert, different music from the forest, and so on. The controls are basically your voice through the headset in the HTC Vive or any other VR headset. And you will use the controllers on each device pretty much just to teleport through the map and complete it. The game mechanics is going to have three main basic mechanics, which are singing or talking to make things grow. The second one is yelling at monsters to make them go away, and the third one, of course, is being silent and hide when the big hunter creature is around. Hazards is pretty much all things that can harm the forest. They are not directly going after you, so these are mostly events like fires, forest fires, enemies. As I said before, there's going to be small enemies that try to eat the forest or the creatures in the forest, like some boar-like creatures that will eat the plants, some insects that will destroy the trees. The hunter, of course, is going to hunt you, and the idea of the game is that it's going to be released in Steam with achievements into it and monetize it, like to be sold as a regular VR game. The replayability will be into finding different special items for the game, and also being able to complete the restoration of the forest in 100%. Let me go now to show you the old prototype of the game. What are the original thing is going to be just a small part of it of how it was. I will start talking, and the tree starts growing up. If I start singing as well, it will do the same. So as you can see, the original prototype was in a very early stage. I showed this in the presentation. It has some basic terrain and one tree from Unity that I was able to control through voice, but there was a lot of problems, including feedback, and the growth of the tree was not as fluid as I would like to. But from that, I was able to make a better prototype of the game that I will try to show you right now in Unity. So this is my actual prototype of Unity. This is the Unity project. I'm going to show you just like how the map is going to be set up so that you can see the difference when we start playing the game. So this is the area of the playable area all around here. The map, the terrain also was made by me. Everything here is made by me, excluding some help that I received and into some problems that I have with the programming by a colleague. Since I'm not a programmer, I require some guidance into that. But the scenario was made by me. The terrain was made with a program called World Machine, and after that I made some rocks and other elements for the game to set up this level. Okay, so I'm gonna just play a little bit of it so you can see how it works. So this is the game so far. I'm just gonna be silent a little bit so you can listen to the environment. So as you can see, there is a general environmental sound. It's a planar sound, so it's playing all around the map. There's a very low sound of wind going around. You can see the enemies in the back of the map, which are these spheres of like so. And as you can see, something has appeared just in front of me, and that's because I'm getting close to the area of where things sprout. So I'm just gonna walk around and make some things grow. I'm going to show you also a little bit of some environmental sounds that are more, let's say, 3D placed so that you can see the difference. But anyways, for example, there's a little tree here that already started growing. I was getting too close to the area. So as you can see, if I keep on talking or singing or whatever, it will keep on growing up to a certain point. I will try to make it go as much as possible. So anything you say, any song, it's not related into sound recognition like speech recognition, but it's more I think about volume and pitch. So yeah, if I just say like for example it will start and keep growing as well. The more you hold it, the more it will constantly grow. As you can see, another tree started growing over there. So the idea is just to make things grow around you and avoid enemies. I'm gonna make some grass grow. It started growing already here. If I keep talking, it starts like growing more. I can also sing like Eye of the Tiger. By the way, I apologize beforehand. I know my voice is not so nice, but that's not about the idea of the game. The idea is of having fun and enjoying these new experiences. Right now, the game is not made into VR since it's also it's just a prototype. So it was made to be easily developed, but the mechanics work in either way. The only difference from this and VR is that VR will be a more immersive experience, of course. Right now, I'm having a little bit of trouble with the prototype with, let's say, frame rate because it has not been yet optimized to its completeness level, let's say. So especially when things are growing up like all together, it starts like slowing down the frame rate a little bit. I will go towards that mountain so you can hear how the sound increases as I approach in these let's say localized sound effects that produce this 3D sound effect. Okay. as you can see, the sound of the wind starts like getting more intense in these parts from where the particles of wind are coming from. And besides that, there's trees. Of course, the trees are growing up in a very speed way, let's say, in a very fast way, with a high speed, just to make the prototype look better and be able to grow things faster. The way I made this is by of 3 sprouts and how do you call grass is also appear is by planting some seeds. So the seeds are planted around the environment, and they will grow in the position that these seeds are planted so far. I don't know if it's the best method so far, but it's good for the prototype, and we will have to keep on testing to see what else can be done and how we can improve the performance, especially of the game. I'm gonna make sure some things grow really fast so you can see how the environment will change it. Lo, 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 lo. Oh. The good thing about this is also that this experience of making things grow and around you, it's kind of like let's say it's like an art. You can be creative around it, and you can make things grow in some places, things that don't grow in others, and make it look the way you like to. Sometimes you want the tree to be bigger than the other to produce different effects as well. For example, I'm just gonna make something grow around here. Lo, 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 lo. Right now, the enemies, by the way, they are spawning in 4 different locations, and they are going in a random direction. But if you go to them and you yell at them, they change direction. So it is not working perfectly, but right now they are kind of going away from you, which is good. And I will try to make it better in the future iterations of the prototype, of course. I apologize for the weird noises, by the way, again. Let's just go behind these. Let's cross the water and try to make some things grow in this way. La 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 la. La 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 la. So okay, as you can see, it's starting to look better. It has more plants around, even when there is not that many. But if I go back to the original position of the game, you will be able to see how it looks. So this is my spawning position right now. It has more plants. You can see where we went, there is like a little bit of trees and grass. The more I speak, for example, in these ways, the more trees will be, the bigger they will be if I keep on speaking with them. So it's like what our parents and grandparents used to tell us, like to make things grow, like when you sing the plant to the plant, when you treat her like a person, it will grow. So that's pretty much the idea behind speaking and singing to the plants, of course, in a mythical way with the spirited creature and everything. La 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 la. Okay, so this is the prototype. It has a few basic mechanics, but they work as intended. The game environment is also in this state. I will show you now a little bit of how I did the process of making some of the art. So for the 2D, for example, I made the Forest Guardian with this like low poly style, very stylized. We changed it a little bit into the 3D, but the idea is the same, using like vibrant colors. For the textures, for example, I used these textures in Photoshop. I made them also stylized with ramps for the grass, and for the trees I started in Maya, making a basic mesh like this. I exported that then to ZBrush, in which I produced an sculpted version of it, high poly version. So there's a lot of polygons around, as you can see. But after that, I exported and baked it with X normals into a low poly version of the tree. So I remade the tree, let's say, in a low poly version, following the shapes that changed when I did the ZBrush sculpt. So this is the final tree, low poly. I did UV maps for these and painted the textures in Photoshop. So these are the textures made in Photoshop using the ambient occlusion channel and painting the rest by hand. And later on I combined everything together, and I will show it to you in Marmoset Toolbag so you can see how it looks. So these have everything together, including the normal maps that I take. For example, I'm going to just take this out. You can see the normals there, how it's changing from the original state and burning the data from the high poly model. And finally, this is what I have. I hope you like the game. I hope you enjoyed the experience when you play it, if you get to try it. And I hope you visit the website as well. Hope you had a nice time watching this video, and it was very informative. I will look forward for your feedback onto it. Thank you very much. See you soon.